The pain of betrayal is a poison that slowly corrodes the heart. For Alex, this pain came from the two people he trusted the most, his longtime girlfriend, Emily, and his best friend, Chris. Alex, 31, was devastated. He and Chris had been friends since they were 18. They met in college and had been inseparable ever since. They support each other through academic struggles, first jobs, and even buying their first homes. Chris had always been the friend everyone wanted. Loyal, fun, and always willing to help. Alex never imagined he would be capable of such cruel betrayal. Emily and Alex had been together for 6 years. They met through mutual friends, and from the start, it seemed like they were meant for each other. They shared interests, values, and dreams. Emily was always a loving and understanding girlfriend, someone Alex imagined spending the rest of his life with. But sometimes appearances can be deceiving. The relationship that seemed perfect began to show signs of cracks. Alex noticed that Emily was becoming emotionally distant, more detached, and less involved in the relationship. He attributed it to work stress and other everyday pressures. Alex tried to get closer, offer support, but nothing seemed to work. The changes were subtle at first. Emily started going out more with her friends, showing less interest in activities they used to share, and spending hours on the phone with evasive excuses. The feeling that something was wrong grew inside Alex, but he struggled to maintain trust in the woman he loved. The same thing started happening with Chris. He, who had always been a positive and present friend, began behaving differently. Chris became more hostile, making derogatory comments about Alex, his achievements, and his relationship. What used to be harmless jokes now felt like personal attacks. Alex, confused and hurt, didn't understand what was happening. He never imagined these behaviors were indicative of something much darker. Casual meetups for a beer or a football game became rare. Chris started avoiding Alex, making excuses not to meet. When they finally did meet, the atmosphere was tense and conversations were superficial. Alex tried to find out what was going on, but Chris shut him out, leaving Alex increasingly worried and confused. The friendship of years seemed to crumble before Alex's eyes, and he felt powerless. He began questioning himself, trying to understand where he had gone wrong. It was like he was losing the two most important people in his life simultaneously, and the feeling of isolation was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Emily became more evasive. Her late-night outings increased, and her excuses became flimsier. "I'm meeting the girls for a drink," she'd say, but she'd come back late, smelling of alcohol and perfume that wasn't hers. Alex, trapped between distrust and love, didn't know how to confront her without seeming paranoid. The tension at home grew. Trivial discussions turned into intense arguments, with Alex trying to understand what was happening and Emily shutting down more and more. "You're imagining things," she'd say, always defensive. But Alex knew something was deeply wrong. The final turn came on what seemed like an ordinary night. Alex was at home, waiting for Emily to return from another night out with friends. He looked at the clock, which showed 2 a.m. Worried, he decided to call her. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail. He tried again with the same result. Agonized, Alex started wondering if Emily was really with her friends or if there was something more. When Emily finally arrived, it was almost 4 a.m. She entered the house quietly, trying not to wake Alex, but he was awake, sitting on a couch, waiting. "Where were you?" he asked, trying to keep calm. "With the girls, I told you," Emily replied, avoiding his gaze. "Until this hour? And why didn't you answer the phone?" "My phone died," she lied, but Alex could see the falsehood in her eyes. That's when Alex decided to investigate. In the following days, he started closely observing Emily and Chris's behavior. He noticed that Chris also became evasive when questioned about his plans. One night, determined to discover the truth, Alex discreetly followed Emily to a downtown bar. What he saw there shattered his heart into 1,000 pieces. Emily and Chris together, in a dark corner, exchanging caresses that left no doubt about what was happening between them. Alex's world collapsed at that moment. He went home, his mind a whirlwind of pain, anger, and confusion. He spent the night sleepless, trying to understand how those he loved and trusted most could betray him this way. Tears flowed freely down his face as he struggled to accept the bitter reality. How will this solid friendship and relationship disintegrate? Keep watching to find out. If you like following stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. The once unshakable friendship between Alex and Chris began to noticeably deteriorate. Chris's behavior changed drastically. He, who had always been a reliable and supportive friend, started acting hostile and envious. Derogatory comments about Alex's achievements became frequent, leaving Alex confused and hurt. Chris's jokes, once harmless, now had a bitter and aggressive tone, clearly indicating something was wrong. The situation worsened when Alex got a promotion at work, a milestone he had hoped to share with his best friend. Instead of congratulating him, Chris just muttered, "Seems like you have all the luck, huh?" His tone was dripping with sarcasm. This behavior starkly contrasted with the Chris Alex knew. The envy was evident, and Alex couldn't understand where all this bitterness was coming from. Moreover, Chris began avoiding meetups that used to be frequent and enjoyable. Football games, poker nights, and outings for drinks gradually disappeared. When Alex tried to arrange something, Chris always had a ready excuse. "I have to work late," or "I'm too tired." The most painful excuse was when Chris claimed to be too busy to celebrate Alex's birthday, something that had never happened before. The tension between the two kept escalating. Alex felt betrayed but still tried to maintain the friendship. He attempted to talk to Chris to find out what was going on, but every attempt was met with coldness or irritation. Chris was pulling further away, and Alex didn't know how to handle it. At home, the situation was no different. Emily, who used to be a safe haven for Alex, now seemed like a stranger. She was always on her phone, messaging, or going out to meet friends. When Alex tried to talk about his concerns, Emily would shut down and become defensive. "You're overreacting," she'd say, but Alex could feel the growing distance between them. Alex's distrust continued to grow. He started noticing small details that had previously gone unnoticed. Emily and Chris exchanged quick, knowing glances during the rare group gatherings. There was a palpable tension in the air, and Alex felt like he was losing control of his life. Chris's career challenges also began to strain the friendship. While Alex advanced in his career, Chris faced difficulties. He had been passed over for a promotion, and his frustration started spilling into his relationship with Alex. Alex's success seemed to amplify Chris's feelings of inadequacy and envy. "You've always been the golden boy," Chris once said, half drunk at a gathering. Alex was shocked by the overt hostility, but tried to ignore it, believing it was just the alcohol talking. The situation reached a critical point during a party at a mutual friend's house. Everyone was having fun, but Alex felt the tension in there. He watched Emily and Chris, who seemed to spend a lot of time together. Anger and frustration began to boil inside him. He tried to distract himself by talking to other friends, but his mind was fixated on the two of them. Chris, clearly drunk, started making provocative comments. "Hey, Alex, seems like you're losing control of your life," he laughed, not caring about the impact of his words. Alex tried to ignore it, but the pain and anger inside him were about to explode. "And you, Emily? Don't you think you deserve more than he can give you?" Chris continued, now clearly provoking a reaction. Alex could no longer hold back. He confronted Chris in front of everyone, the tension erupting into a verbal showdown. "What are you trying to do, Chris? Do you think you can just destroy everything I've built?" Alex shouted, his voice trembling with anger. Chris, instead of backing down, laughed and responded, "Maybe I'm just trying to show you the truth. You're a failure, Alex, and everyone knows it." What started as a verbal argument quickly escalated into physical violence. Chris, in a fit of rage, attacked Alex, knocking him to the ground. Other guests tried to intervene, but the fight had already caused significant damage. Alex, hurt and betrayed, looked at Chris with a mix of pain and disbelief. He never imagined their friendship would end in such a brutal way. Emily, who had watched everything, ran to help Chris instead of Alex. "He didn't mean to do this. He's going through a lot," she said, trying to justify Chris's behavior. Alex, hurt and confused, realized something was deeply wrong. He started connecting the dots, realizing that Emily and Chris were closer than he had imagined. The betrayal was clear now. Alex felt an overwhelming weight in his chest as he tried to process the reality. His girlfriend and his best friend, the two people he trusted most, were conspiring against him. The pain of betrayal was unbearable, and he felt completely helpless. Will Chris reveal his true intentions? Don't miss the next chapter. The party at the friend's house was in full swing. Loud music and lively conversations filled the room, but for Alex, everything felt like a distant blur. He was physically present but mentally focused entirely on Emily and Chris. Since the previous confrontation, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Chris, visibly drunk, started making increasingly aggressive comments. You know, Alex, I always thought you were the kind of guy who just coasted through life, he said, a cruel smile on his lips. You got lucky at work, lucky in love, but you never really deserved any of it. The room fell silent, all eyes on Alex and Chris. Emily, standing next to Chris, looked uncomfortable, but said nothing to defend him. Alex felt the anger rising inside him. He tried to stay calm, but the pain and betrayal were at the surface. What are you talking about, Chris? I worked hard for everything I have, Alex replied, his voice shaking with emotion. Chris laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through the room. Worked hard? You had everything handed to you, Alex. Maybe it's time someone showed you the truth. The situation quickly escalated. Chris lunged at Alex, fury evident in his eyes. He shoved Alex hard, making him stagger backward. You don't deserve anything you have, Alex. Not your job, not your girlfriend, Chris shouted, his voice full of venom. Alex tried to defend himself, but Chris was out of control. The physical confrontation was brutal. Chris, in his drunken rage, landed punches on Alex, knocking him to the ground. Alex felt pain radiate through his body, but the emotional pain was worse. He never imagined his friendship with Chris would end so violently. Friends around them tried to intervene, but Chris was uncontrollable, continuing to attack Alex with blind fury. Emily, who watched everything, finally intervened. Chris, stop. You're going to seriously hurt him, she shouted, trying to pull him away from Alex. Chris, still furious, pushed Emily aside. Stay out of this, Emily. He deserves this, Chris replied, his voice full of hate. Emily looked at Alex, her expression a mix of panic and regret. Chris, please stop, she begged again, but he ignored her. Finally, some friends managed to hold Chris back and drag him away from Alex, who was lying on the ground, bleeding and bruised. The room, once full of laughter and conversation, was now enveloped in tense silence. Emily ran to Alex, trying to help him up, but he pushed her away. Don't touch me, Alex said, his voice full of pain and distrust. He looked at Emily and Chris, understanding the betrayal setting in his mind. As he tried to collect himself, Alex realized there was more to the situation than he had imagined. He recalled the knowing glances between Emily and Chris, the times he found them together, the whispered conversations. The betrayal was clear, and he felt a wave of nausea realizing the extent of it. Emily, with tears in her eyes, tried to justify Chris's actions. Alex, he's going through a tough time. He didn't mean to do this, she said, her voice trembling. But Alex couldn't accept her excuses. A tough time? That doesn't justify what he did. And you, Emily? What's going on between you two? Alex asked, pain and anger mixing in his voice. Emily hesitated, avoiding Alex's gaze. I don't know how it happened. We got close, and things got confusing, she finally admitted. Alex felt like the ground was falling out from under him. The woman he loved and his best friend had betrayed his trust in an unimaginable way. The revelation was devastating. Emily confessed that she and Chris had kissed a few times, but insisted she never wanted things to go that far. I was confused, Alex. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, but her words felt empty to Alex. He felt a mix of sadness, anger, and despair. You destroyed everything, Emily. How could you do this to me? He asked, his voice breaking with emotion. Emily tried to get closer, but Alex stepped back. No, I can't do this. It's over, he declared firmly. The words were hard to say, but he knew it was the right decision. The pain of betrayal was too deep to ignore or forgive. He needed to move on, even if it meant leaving behind everything he knew. Alex walked away, leaving Emily and Chris behind. As he walked out of the house, he felt a mix of relief and despair. The night that began with promises of fun and camaraderie ended in violence and devastating revelations. The friendship with Chris was irreparably broken, and his relationship with Emily had come to a painful end. How will Emily react to Chris's assault? Keep watching to find out. The morning after the confrontation was a whirlwind of emotions for Alex. He woke up in pain and with an empty feeling in his chest. The memories of the previous night came back with full force, and he felt a mix of anger and sadness as he remembered Chris's brutality and Emily's betrayal. Despite his injuries, Alex knew he had to face what was coming. Emily arrived at Alex's house later that morning. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but she tried to maintain her composure. Alex, We need to talk, she said softly, hesitantly. Alex looked at her, his heart heavy with the pain of betrayal. What is there left to say, Emily? You defended Chris after what he did to me, he replied, his voice filled with bitterness. Emily sighed, tears streaming down her face. I know it looks terrible, but Chris was going through a tough time. He was frustrated and angry. I didn't know he would react that way, she said, trying to justify Chris's actions. Alex shook his head in disbelief. Frustrated and angry? That doesn't justify what he did. And you, Emily? How could you betray me like this? He asked, feeling the anger rise inside him. Emily tried to get closer to Alex, but he stepped back, maintaining the distance. I made a mistake, Alex. I was confused and got carried away. But I never meant to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling. Alex felt the pain of betrayal again, like a knife in his chest. Confused? Carried away? That's no excuse, Emily. You betrayed me with my best friend, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Emily dropped to her knees, tears flowing freely down her face. Please, Alex, forgive me. I know I messed up, but I can't lose you. I love you, she pleaded, her voice desperate. Alex looked at her, feeling a mix of compassion and anger. Love? If you really loved me, you wouldn't have done what you did, he said firmly. I need time to think. I can't just forgive and forget. The situation between Alex and Emily remained tense in the following days. Emily tried in various ways to make amends, but Alex was determined to keep his distance. He needed space to process the pain and betrayal. Each time Emily tried to get closer, Alex felt the wound reopen. He knew he needed time to heal, but Emily's constant presence made it even harder. Chris, on the other hand, was completely absent. After the confrontation, he disappeared from Alex and Emily's lives, leaving a void that was hard to ignore. Alex felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief for not having to face Chris again, but frustration for not having proper closure. The unanswered questions about Chris's true intentions continued to haunt him. One night, as Alex sat on a couch reflecting on everything that had happened, he received a text message from Emily. Please meet me at the park tomorrow. We need to talk, the message read. Alex hesitated for a moment but decided he needed to face Emily once more. He needed answers and perhaps closure to move on. The next morning, Alex went to the park. The place was calm and serene, in contrast to the storm of emotions inside him. He spotted Emily sitting on a bench, looking lost in thought. When she saw him, she stood up and walked towards him. Thank you for coming, Alex, she said softly. I needed answers, Emily. And honestly, I don't know what you can say to fix this, Alex replied, trying to stay calm. Emily nodded, understanding his pain. I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want you to know I'm willing to do anything to fix what I destroyed, she said, her voice filled with regret. Alex looked into Emily's eyes, searching for sincerity. Do you really want to fix this? Or are you just trying to ease your guilt? He asked, his voice firm. Emily hesitated for a moment but finally responded, I want to fix this, Alex. Not for me, but because I still love you and don't want everything we built together to be lost. Emily's words touched Alex, but the pain was still very present. I need time, Emily. I need space to heal and understand all this. I don't know if we can go back to what we were, but maybe we can find a way to move forward somehow, he said softly. Emily nodded, understanding Alex's need. I will respect your space, Alex. I just want you to know I'll be here waiting if you decide it's worth trying again, she said, her voice filled with hope. Alex felt a small spark of hope inside him, but knew the path to recovery would be long and hard. As they walked together through the park, in a tense but understanding silence, Alex reflected on the complexity of human relationships. Emily and Chris's betrayal had shaken his world, but also forced him to face his own vulnerabilities and strengths. He knew the journey to healing was just beginning, but he was determined to find a path to peace and happiness, with or without Emily by his side. Will Emily admit her involvement with Chris? Don't miss the next chapter. Emily finally admitted everything. Yes, Alex. I had feelings for Chris. We kissed a few times, but I swear I never wanted it to go further, she said, tears streaming down her face. I was lost and confused. Chris was there to listen when you were always busy with work. Alex, devastated by the confession, felt a mix of anger and sadness. You destroyed everything, Emily. You and Chris betrayed my trust in a way I never thought possible. I can't stay with you anymore, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. With that, he ended the relationship, feeling completely lost and betrayed. Will Alex manage to cope with the pain and betrayal? Keep watching to find out. Alex faced a long and painful recovery. His physical injuries were severe, including bruised ribs and a fractured elbow, which required weeks of physical therapy. During this time, he had to deal with both the physical and emotional pain of being betrayed by the two people he trusted most. Emily's parents, horrified by the situation, apologized to Alex and offered support. We never imagined something like this could happen. We're here to help in any way we can, they said. The gesture was a small consolation for Alex, who was still dealing with the shock and pain of the betrayal. Alex spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened. He revisited every detail of his relationship with Emily and his friendship with Chris, trying to understand where things went wrong. He realized that despite all his flaws, he was not to blame for their betrayal. This brought some relief, but the pain was still intense. Will Alex find a way to emotional healing? Don't miss the next chapter. A month later, Emily contacted Alex, asking to meet. Reluctantly, he agreed, needing answers and closure. When they met, Emily was in an emotional state of devastation. Alex, I'm so sorry. I know I ruined everything. Please, let me explain, she said, tears streaming down her face. Alex felt a mix of anger and compassion. Emily, you destroyed my trust. How do you expect me to just forget what happened? He asked, his voice filled with pain. Emily continued, trying to explain her feelings and how she had lost her way. I was unhappy, Alex. I felt alone and found comfort in Chris. It was a terrible mistake, and I deeply regret it. Will Alex let Emily back into his life? Keep watching to find out. Emily revealed shocking details about her relationship with Chris. He manipulated me, Alex. I was vulnerable, and he took advantage of it. He even physically abused me on a few occasions, she said, her voice trembling. Alex felt torn between punishing Chris and forgiving Emily. The revelation of physical abuse was a devastating blow for Alex. He had always seen Chris as a loyal and trustworthy friend, but now saw a dark side to him. The idea that Emily could have been manipulated and abused by Chris added a new dimension to his pain and confusion. Will Alex decide to seek justice or move on? Keep watching to find out. Desperate for clarity, Alex sought out Lisa, Emily's best friend. They met at a cafe, and Alex shared his feelings and doubts. Lisa, I don't know who to trust anymore. Emily betrayed me, but now she says she was manipulated and abused by Chris. What do I do? He asked, his voice full of despair. Lisa, with a serious expression, said, Alex, I know Emily made a terrible mistake, but I believe she still loves you. She was lost and vulnerable. As for Chris, he always had a dark side that few of us saw. You need to do what's best for you. But remember that Emily is also suffering. Lisa's words brought some relief to Alex, but also complicated his feelings. He realized he had to make a tough decision. Forgive Emily and try to rebuild what was left of his life or move on, leaving the painful past behind. Will Lisa offer clarity for Alex? Don't miss the next chapter. Alex decided to meet Emily one last time to end the relationship definitively. Emily, I understand you were vulnerable and that Chris manipulated you, but I can't continue like this. My trust was destroyed, and I need to move on, he said, his voice firm but filled with sadness. Emily, tears in her eyes, accepted Alex's decision. I understand, Alex. I just want you to know I always loved you and always will. I hope one day you can forgive me, she said with a tone of finality. Alex decided to focus on his emotional recovery. He blocked Emily on all social media and contacts, determined to move forward. He started attending therapy, seeking to understand and heal the deep wounds left by the betrayal. Over time, he began to find peace and rebuild his life. Will Alex find peace and rebuild his life? Keep watching for more inspiring stories. If you enjoyed following this story, don't forget to leave a like. And if you want to follow more stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. It will be a pleasure to have you with us.